Yeah.
Testing, testing.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
William, can
Just me though.
raise his mic a little bit, not down. Only raise my hand a little bit. Good morning. Welcome to the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority Programs and Contracts Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, March 18, 2026. This meeting is being recorded. Commissioner Graves, Commissioner Gruhl, Commissioner Saunders,
Here.
Commissioner Sheik.
Here.
For the record, Commissioner Sheik is here as alternate. We have quorum.
Okay. So we will go ahead and go to item 1.0, which is acceptance of the minutes, including any corrections for this committee. The meeting held Wednesday, February 18th. Do you have any?
No corrections.
None. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and accept those minutes. I don't believe we need to approve that.
No, Commissioner.
Okay, we'll move along to item 2.0, Chief Program Officer Report. Sophia Rice.
No, today Nathaniel.
Good morning, commissioners.
It's you.
So different.
You may need new glasses.
I just these last week, actually.
Yes, as you can see, I'm not Sophia Rice. My name is Nathaniel Verga. I'm the Deputy Chief Program Officer, filling in for Sophia, who is off today. So I will be giving you the CPO update though. So before I go into our recent activity, I do want to share an update on our discussions with HSH, the new county department, regarding the transition of programs that are coming in the new fiscal year. We want to share where we currently stand with some key decisions that the county has to make that will have an impact on LAHSA in the short term. First, I want to recognize the scale of the county's effort to stand up the new department. I also acknowledge that it is not solely the responsibility of the county to ensure a functional system, and that as the Joint Powers Authority, we here at LAHSA will continue to bring the city and the county together as collaborative partners. That is our commitment. My update today will focus on a few key programmatic areas that we've raised with our county partners that have particular urgency and will impact LAHSA's planning for operations on July 1st, beginning on July 1st. First of all, with TLS, time-limited subsidies. As providers are looking ahead to their programs transitioning to the county in July, they've been expressing a need for clear referral pathways into TLS. So currently, LAHSA's programs and data teams are working on prioritization and referral guidelines that we will share with HSH to help them as they are making their decisions internally. Additionally, since the city is ramping up its new Alliance TLS slots, HSH has noted that they are likely to initially prioritize participants from county-funded interim housing into their TLS and other city-funded interventions, given that the cities will have programs specifically focused on city residents. LAHSA needs to understand who will be prioritized for HSH's turnover slots, meaning the ongoing slots that will carry over from this fiscal year to next, so that LAHSA and its partners can make informed decisions to ensure that we're allocating our own TLS slots to support as much of the rest of the system as possible. The city is also finalizing prioritization for its new TLS program, especially as it relates to families, and this will inform how the county establishes its own prioritization framework. And then finally, as a system, we need to align on a policy framework for supporting TLS participants who are reaching the end of their subsidy and who are not fully engaging with their case managers or are struggling to increase their rent contributions. So we're working on formal guidance and policy for providers collaboratively with our city and county partners that we hope to be able to issue in the next week or so. We're continuing to work, and I'll talk much more about this in the TLS ramp down presentation later, but we're continuing to work with city, county, and providers in a variety of spaces to work through roadblocks that they're facing during the ramp down, to review individual dashboards and individual progress of their participants, and to monitor trends that we're seeing across the system as we approach the end of the fiscal year. So moving on to outreach. The main body of the work that we're focusing now on with HSH is the assessment of LAHSA's county-funded vehicles, which are used in outreach operations, as well as the co-location sites where we've had our operations based. We need to make some quick decisions about whether or not we're going to continue leases or cancel the leases on our co-location spots. And that's dependent on the county's desire to utilize those as deployment sites for the outreach teams once they transition to the county. And given that we don't yet have a clear date for the transitions of those teams, we're in a little bit of a pickle in terms of not wanting to close any of those spots before the teams transition, but we also don't want to cancel a lease that the county may want to take over and put the county in a difficult position of not having deployment sites in various areas of the county. LAHSA is seeking timely coordination on the co-locations to make sure that the county can take over the ones that they do need. Additionally, in terms of encampment tracking, LAHSA, our outreach coordinators, have been responsible for the development of our outreach module, encampment module that allows us to literally draw encampments on a map and identify the participants, the residents of those encampments. That allows us to track the progress that is being made in terms of outreach and movement of folks out of encampments and into shelter, both through normal activities, but also through specific encampment resolution activities. With those staff transitioning to the county, we are working to get clarity from the county in terms of whether they expect those staff to be able to continue that work, or if we need to build out that capacity internally at LAHSA. And this is really essential in terms of data for our applications to the state. It was required for us to report on all encampments across the county in our HAP6 application. It's also essential in terms of tracking the work that's done for Encampment Resolution Fund programs. The county has been requesting specific information that LAHSA is responding to, and we welcome continued discussions with the county's leadership about how outreach coordination will function under the ECRC so that we can minimize disruption for outreach activities and for staff. In terms of emergency response, the county is planning to take over operations through the emergency response program, including winter shelter and emergency motel vouchers. So LAHSA is again trying to get clarity in terms of what that will look like, what the program model will be. Again, as our staff may be transitioning as soon as next month, we want to make sure that there is clarity of protocol as soon as that transition happens, because we will not have staff throughout the county who can respond to an emergency. So God forbid there's a wildfire in the week or two after the staff transition to the county. We want to make sure that we are all clear in terms of how response will be handled. So both the city and the county are refining their approaches to their emergency response. And we're looking to host a joint conversation with both parties to help clarify roles and ensure that residents across the county will be appropriately served in the case of an emergency. In terms of master leasing, we are continuing to have conversations with the county on the master leasing program. Initial discussions with HSH have been ongoing. In early conversations, the county has suggested a model where LAHSA would continue holding the master lease agreements with the landlords for the remainder of the lease terms, while HSH may directly take over contracting for services and property management, including overseeing staff at the master lease buildings. But there's still ongoing conversations with the supervisors, and so that plan is not yet finalized. So we'll continue working with HSH to ensure that LAHSA is able to manage its responsibilities that it will retain in the next fiscal year, and to support, a responsible and seamless transition for all parties involved. For interim housing, we have some concerns in terms of how data will be tracked. The county has talked about the possibility of transitioning to CHAMP, which would create some potential significant burdens in terms of referral pathways, given that our data systems are not able to directly communicate to each other. I know that the county is looking at the possibility of continuing to use HMIS for its infrastructure, but we are quickly approaching some challenging deadlines to be able to make sure that that can happen. So ideally, to ease the administrative burden for providers and avoid duplicate participant data, LAHSA needs clarity on which interim housing beds would transition both to CHAMP, but also to HSH oversight, and how interim housing sites that may have braided funding, so they may have funding from multiple sources, city, county, HSH, as well as DMH, to ensure that ideally those all could be tracked in HMIS, so that a single provider is not having to use multiple data systems for just a single site. The process for building out HMIS access and developing governance requires typically requires several months, meaning that we are quickly running up on a deadline to be able to make that happen by July 1st. It's possible we've already exceeded that deadline, but we want to move forward as quickly as possible.
Can you say that one more time? Which deadline is it?
So we typically, if we're going to make this transition for all the programs and ensure that HSH has the ability to manage the programs through HMIS the way it would want to, we need to work with them on getting clarity around governance of those beds, as well as doing all the program setups in a way that they could manage intakes and referrals. There's going to be a lot of transitions period. We'll have to close down existing HMIS programs and reopen them as HSH programs, but also designing all the workflows with them and for them. And
So it sounds like there's not a lot of transparency around how things are being set up
please,
with the new department.
I'll defer to Bevan to be able to speak with greater detail.
Good morning, Bevan Kuhn, Deputy Chief Analytics Officer. Yeah, so we had a lot of meetings about what it would take to move the interim housing. Right now, they're only looking at interim housing. Only interim housing is under consideration for remaining or moving into fully in HMIS. So their time limited subsidies, everything else, ICMS will remain in CHAMP. But to move interim housing, there's a few workflows. One, we have to make sure that they can build down to CalAIM, which means building out different workflows in HMIS to accommodate some of that stuff. It would also mean kind of partitioning off HMIS so we can take PHI and other information. And we also need to have really clear established governance, like between HSH and LAHSA, because we're the system administrator for the database right now. But the way that they would be engaging in it could mean that they also need system administration access. So there's just all this. And then if they have system administration access, where are the boundaries? What does the system at LAHSA do? What does HSH do? How do we work together? And there's the other 3 COCs that are also in the same instance. So the governance as itself and how we do this is one huge body of work. And as everyone knows, governance documents and alignments take time. But then there's also building out all the inventory for some of these. It takes a lot of times to build out the inventory module is amazing. It's how we track all of our interim housing. That's why we now have really reliable data on occupancy. It's how we match. But building that out does take time because you have to go to every site and map out every site, every room, what the specifics of the room are. So there's just tons of work. I would say in a perfect world, we would need a year to do this. And so we, without a decision coming from them, it pushes up closer and closer. And then so it's like, well, then do programs continue to operate? There's just all these decision points and work that has to be done around that in a system that's already in the middle, in addition to all the other work that has to be done, in addition of like maybe, shrinking and lack of funding and losing staff. So it's all of that in context that makes it very challenging on such condensed timelines. It's stressful. And then providers don't know either where their programs are going to be. And for interim housing, all of street outreach is in, and sorry, I'm going on a little bit longer, but all of street outreach is in HMIS. So like, what are the, I would love to see it that the entire system has one, regardless of funder, you just submit the interim housing referral in HMIS, regardless. And it's just one-stop shop. And then we can make different queues to get matched into different beds. But like, from a user experience, from a participant experience and service provider, I would like them not to have to care like who's funding the bed, just like this is how I get access and on the queues. And so in the absence of that, if they choose not to go into HMIS, there's whole other implications for like, then how do you access the beds? What are the workflows around that? How do you do that? So both options are challenging, but anyway, the lack of decision there. And I've been working really closely with the data leadership team and they've really been engaging, but there
Mm.
still is no decision. It's stuck somewhere. And so without that decision point, it becomes challenging. So.
Challenging.
Yeah, and I just we worry about timelines.
Yeah.
And then also I personally am worried about like being put into an impossible timeline and then people being like, well, LAHSA can't do it, but like the timeline isn't realistic to begin with because there was so much delay on the decision being made that you can't actually meet a July 1st deadline of getting everyone into HMIS. But so that's one of my concerns too, is and the weaponization
Yep.
of that lack of reality there.
I appreciate that. That's
Yeah.
what I was just trying to get to, because we may understand these things, but it's the providers and the public who also is seeing these things play out in real time. And this is transparency. This is very helpful. Unfortunately, not the news we want to hear, but it's a lay of the land and where we're standing, because July 1st is around the corner and we've got so many things that are happening. So I just wanted that to be highlighted, which you were saying but Bevan, you
Yeah.
brought it home.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Bevan. So just in conclusion on this section, I mean, our goal is to support a well-coordinated transition of programs that preserves service continuity, that maximizes the effectiveness of the programs while minimizing the administrative burden on providers. We remain fully committed to collaboration with both the city and the county to address all these operational challenges together, and we welcome continued dialogue as decisions are finalized. We also will continue to report on these urgent items to commission that will give you all a chance to weigh in on decisions that we make along the way. Moving on to the more traditional updates in systems and planning, we are currently focused significantly on finalizing all of the scopes of required services for all of our programs. We're working in collaboration with HSH on programs that will be funded both by LAHSA and HSH to make sure that those program requirements align as much as possible. Again, trying to make sure that it's functionally as easy as possible for the providers to be able to administer programs that are maybe funded by different sources. With the LA-HAT, the homeless assessment tool, over the next several months, we are bringing to the CS Policy Council for consideration the outcomes of our initial implementation of the new tool, and we'll be discussing what a transition from VI-SPDAT to the LA-HAT will look like in the coming months. We'll continue to bring more information to this committee and the full commission as CS Policy Council meets on this item and begins to make decisions, if any, quickly around new assessment guidelines or requirements. On the HUD COC, I will actually leave all of that to Jess. Last time I stole too much of her thunder, so I will. There's been no dramatic progress in terms of things happening at the COC level. But Jess does have some other news in terms of things that are coming out from the federal government. In our data management work, our training team, over 2,100 individual users accessed our centralized training academy in February alone, and they completed over 3,000 on-demand and live instructor-led trainings. For the past few months, the CTA, Centralized Training Academy, has featured learning paths for interim housing and time-limited subsidies. And so far, 459 users have completed the interim housing learning path, and 268 users have completed the time-limited subsidy learning path. And just for a reminder, those are trainings that are designed for A to Z, how the work of somebody who's working in one of those programs should look. So it can serve both as onboarding training for new staff, but also as refreshers, and it is broken up into modules. So supervisors who may see a staff member struggling in one particular area can assign their staff to go take one module of that learning pathway as a refresher. So they're not required to do the entire pathway, but as you can see, we've had over 700 users complete the entire pathways between the two, interim housing and TLS. So also as a reminder to the provider community, LAHSA's training team is accepting direct requests for live trainings that would be delivered by LAHSA's training team. And so far, 10 provider agencies have requested trainings. And finally, I'll share just a couple of quick updates from our permanent housing team. Later in the agenda, I'll give an update on the time-limited subsidy ramp down. But just quick updates on the PSH side. We have 37 buildings that are in active lease up. 12 of those buildings have had their HAP. 5 of those buildings have already reached 90% occupancy. And on turnover-based project, turnover project base, and this is an ever-moving target, but as of yesterday, we had 347 total available units, and 305 of those have already been matched, so are in process for the participant to be moving in. And on average, we match roughly 50 participants to turnover units per day. So I would expect by the end of the day today that those remaining 35 or so will have already been matched. And that concludes my update, but willing to take any questions.
Thank you.
I do not right now. That is a lot.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I appreciate, hopefully we will get more continual updates. I know at the next meeting, full commission meeting on Friday, we're going to talk about an ad hoc transition committee, because I do think, especially with regards to some of these timelines being still not finalized, we need more hands on deck here.
I did have a question. We're experiencing a heat wave right now. And we were talking about emergency response and things like that. And I've seen some conversations around cooling stations in Los Angeles and also outreach and engagement. So I wanted to know if you had any information around outreach and engagement efforts to inform folks experiencing homelessness of this heat wave, safety measures, and if you have any information regarding the cooling stations, and is that something that LAHSA monitors or manages?
Absolutely. I appreciate the question. Yes, I should have included that in my update. We actually began preparation for the heat wave midweek last week, as we knew that it was coming. That included everything from coordination with city and county around what cooling stations would become available, but also ensuring that our outreach teams were equipped with with water and resources to be able to provide to participants who may be struggling in the heat. There have been cooling stations stood up across the county. I don't have the specifics in front of me, but I'll shoot a text and see if we can get some information in real time during this meeting that we could share out to the public.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and just a note for everyone in the public. We are in a heat wave.
Yes.
So take care of yourselves. I got my snacks and my water. And also just wanted to publicly acknowledge my tardiness and thank you all for your patience. Any public?
No, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you so much for your report.
Thank you.
So we can move to 3.0. Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners, LAHSA colleagues, members of the public. My name is Abigail Proth, Director of Funding, Procurement, and Allocations here at LAHSA. I'm here to present item number 3 on the agenda this morning, which seeks to request committee's approval to enter into agreements with funders for fiscal year 25-26. There are 3 new amendments to funder agreements put forward under this item. The first is with our City Alliance funder agreement, an increase of $3.7 million to support tiny home village operations and furniture, fixtures, and equipment. This is a funder agreement with LAHD. The second is under our City General Fund, also with LAHD, an increase of $3.9 million to support the extension of a CD7 pilot recreational vehicle to home program, as well as the release of funding for our LAHSA head teams and system navigators. And finally, with LAHD as well, our City Mayfair agreement for $1.5 million to support operations at the Mayfair Hotel and extension through June 30th, 2026. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
We're doing 3 and 4 together?
I think it's just that we're at 3.
Just 3, okay.
We're at 3. I'll entertain a motion.
I will move to approve.
Commissioner Saunders,
Yes. aye.
Commissioner Sheik.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 4.0.
Good morning, Commissioners, LASA staff, and members of the colleague who may be joining us. Alejandro Gomez Palma with the Contract Performance and Compliance Department. For item 4.0, as reflected in the memo and the table, we are requesting Commissioners to authorize our interim CEO to enter into service agreements with 2 service providers. And these are all funded by City Alliance. I won't go into the details because they're in the table, but just to flag a few things. So the 2 service providers are Hope of the Valley Rescue Mission, doing business as Hope the Mission. And one of them is John Wesley Community Health Institute. And these are all for tiny home village sites in 3 different cities, Van Nuys, Sun Valley, and Los Angeles, corresponding to Council District 2, 6, and 1, for a total of 3.7 million. One thing we would note is the contracts seem fairly short. Some of them are starting in April and they're supposed to end. This is because we are waiting for, they are expected to be continued next year. So these are, as you will see, furniture and for operations. The funding is expected from City Alliance, from the city, in order to continue these into next fiscal year. But the initial contract period is just through June 2026.
To set it up.
Exactly.
Got you.
If the commissioners have any questions.
I do. I will make a motion to approve this item 4.0.
Second.
Oh, do I have a second? Okay, I second the other one. Okay.
Commissioner Saunders,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheik.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we'll move to item 5.0.
Good morning, Commissioners, LASA colleagues, and members of the public. My name is Dan Fisher, and I'm the Associate Director of Procurement here at LASA. Item 5 on your agenda this morning is requesting the committee's review and approval of our recommendations for the request for statement of qualifications. We received 8 applications by the February 15th deadline. All of those applications coming to us from agencies that have never before held a primary contract with LASA. Based upon our evaluation, we are recommending 2 organizations for certification as qualified bidders for LASA-issued funding opportunities. And those organizations are Community Bridge Housing Corporation and Encompass Housing. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I don't have any questions on this.
I don't either.
I will make a motion to approve these 2 organizations.
I second.
Commissioner Saunders,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheik.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously.
And I do want to make a point, if I can. I got some information on the cooling centers. So just revisiting that conversation. Do you want to share?
Sure. Just for clarification, this was what I was able to get most immediately. And this is just information about the city, but just for the public's information, cooling centers that have been open within the city include the Pecan Recreation Center on 145 South Pecan Street, the Algin Sutton Recreation Center on 8800 South Hoover, the Canoga Park Adult Center on 7326 Jordan Avenue in Canoga Park, and the North Hollywood Senior Citizen Center at 5301 Tahunga Avenue. I believe there are cooling centers open in the county, but I don't have those details in front of me. If I can get those before the close of the meeting, we can share those out as well. But just also for the general public, libraries also serve always as cooling centers. They're air conditioned, and anybody is welcome to use the space in the library. So if anybody's having trouble accessing one of these cooling centers, their nearest public library can serve as a respite from the heat.
Got it. And do we have a timeline? Because I see it says open on the 17th, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Do we have the days that they will be open?
My understanding is through the remainder of the week.
Okay.
I believe the expectation is for the heat to remain in the 90s through Friday. So I would expect that they'll remain open through that time period.
Great, thank you. That's a very immediate.
We do our best.
You are doing your best. You're doing a great job. So move to item 6.0, I believe.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Got my notes here. Hey, folks. My name is John Catone. I am a senior technical advisor for LASA's data management. So we're going to go over our system KPI update. This will be system KPI data through the end of Q2 for this current fiscal year. So that's through December 31st, the data that we'll be looking at today. If we go to the next slide, for a reminder for folks, the system KPIs are essentially our way to aggregate all of the data that we have access to in HMIS to try to get a comprehensive look at our system and with the data that we have available to us, and how clients specifically move through the system. So this pulls out of just looking at specific program outcomes and looking at the clients as they move from program to program through the system. And these are our most all-encompassing metrics that we have on system performance at LASA. And we have you'll see in this a link to the dashboard. So this is all of the data you'll see here is available via LASA's website, where we have our system KPI dashboard. You're actually going to see a couple of screenshots of the dashboard as sort of a way to kind of show how we use that dashboard to develop insights and whatnot. So would like to shout out that dashboard and trying to be as transparent as possible with all of this information. And today's presentation is really just about walking through some high level updates that we've found. So we go to the next slide. A couple of updates just about each time we release these, we release them quarterly. We're going to continue to make sort of iterations on improving the overall quality of these metrics. And one of the main inclusions this quarter was the inclusion of the coordinated entry enrollments into our component, which we call the unsheltered services. The three components are unsheltered services, interim housing, and our permanent housing component. So this is about any of these programs that are providing services to folks that aren't specifically providing housing. And the purpose of this was these types of programs are often used by staffers in like DMH and DHS if they're entering their data in their own databases, but they need to be able to use HMIS and enrollments in HMIS to assess their clients for PSH eligibility and whatnot. And so this is another enrollment type that really helps us understand folks that are theoretically at the beginning of this sort of unsheltered interim housing and permanent housing journey. And this aligns as well with calculations we do for inflow, which determines system financial need and tie into some of the metrics in Measure A as well. And really the point of this introduction, or including this starting now moving forward, is to give us a better understanding of how participants are getting connected to housing. And so this is really more at the beginning of that journey. We can go to the next slide to talk a little bit about a couple additional improvements. And like I said, we will continue to sort of iterate with the system KPIs to try to make them to improve data quality. And one of the main improvements we focused on this past quarter was program classification in HMIS. HMIS is used not just by LASA, but by other organizations, and there's a lot of programs involved. And so we are adding enhancements to HMIS to allow us to really well classify those programs. For example, making sure interim housing, every single program that does interim housing is included. HUD standards will do things like break out Safe Haven as its own program type, but we would like to report on that. It has a lot of the same operational pieces as interim housing, so we would like to report on it as interim housing. This is just an example of how different programs will have different classifications, but for the purpose of system KPIs, we really want to see from a high level being able to look at any program that's providing interim housing and include that in our system flow. So those are some of the updates, and like we said, there'll be an ongoing effort to make these updates each time we release these metrics. I think we can move on now to a quick recap of the last time we made an update on the system KPIs. It was on data as of Q3 of fiscal year 24-25. just some high level things we talked about. We really focused on trying to look at the impact of encampment resolution efforts. And some of the highlights were on the unsheltered services side, encampment resolution led to a lower time to interim housing connection, which was purposeful, trying to get people off the streets and into interim housing and shelter quickly. Other things we noticed there was as we had a larger influx into interim housing, that did lead to a higher time to throughput to permanent housing. And one other thing we saw was that the lowest throughput to permanent housing numbers since the pre-encampment resolution right at the end. So encampment resolution really led to a high influx of folks moving from unsheltered service to interim housing, and did lead to an influx into permanent housing as well. But at that time, we noticed the most recent quarter that started to fade. So we'll talk more about that later in this presentation. And then in time-related subsidy, at the time, we had seen the highest TLS housed number that we've had in our system so far. So those were sort of where those were some of the high level takeaways from that point, and we'll kind of get into what we can see now following these updates. So we'll move on to unsheltered services. So each time we do this, we show a slide similar to this, which is just looking from a high level about how many folks are served per quarter, about how long they stay in these types of services, and what exiting component, that this type of component looks like. These numbers are really high level and don't tend to shift drastically quarter to quarter. So we'll kind of point out if we do see any significant shifts. But with unsheltered services, we usually see lower time in this component. We tend to see higher exits back to the streets or unknown based on the just the nature of these programs. A lot of times when you're including street outreach, and if you talk to street outreach folks, a lot of those interactions don't necessarily lead to immediate, even clients wanting to move in or participants wanting to move in yet. It takes a lot of sort of back and forth interaction to gain that trust to move people into interim housing and things like that. And so we often see a lot of exits to the streets or unknown. On this case, also folks will tend, these are just folks seeing people on the streets or in access centers. So it's often that they don't see that same person again within a month or two. And so that's why we tend to see that number, 72%, be quite high. And but also the main number here we're looking at is the connections to interim housing or temporary housing, as that is really one of the main pieces to unsheltered services, is connecting people to shelter. So if we look at the next slide, this is now a screenshot of our dashboard, and that's on the website. And one thing we wanted to notice here is we have noticed a slow but consistent drop off in the number of folks that we're seeing in unsheltered services in the system. We don't have necessarily a direct cause or reason for this. We'll continue to monitor. If we think that there's something worth reporting, we'll bring up. But we did see that this was an interesting piece to bring up, because as we go to the next slide, we'll start to see something that we have a little bit more kind of to talk about here, which is time to interim housing. So this is before we were sort of showing just the total number of folks served in unsheltered services. And now we're taking a look at of those folks served, about how long it's taking for them to get connected to interim housing. And we are slowly starting to see over the last couple of last sort of calendar year plus a couple extra quarters, a rise in the time to interim housing. Now, the main reason that we feel this is significant to bring up is because as we talked about from the last update, one of the main impacts we saw from the beginning of encampment resolution was that the time to interim housing went down drastically, and that had to do with the purpose of those encampment resolution efforts. But if you go to the next slide, we'll kind of space this out from a much longer trajectory, and you'll see at the beginning of this graph, you'll see the time to interim housing really start to drop. The blue and the gray are your all overall time, and then the adult, and those are the largest populations, specifically in unsheltered services. So you'll see a lot more consistent sort of movement there. You'll see a little bit more jaggedy lines from the other two populations because there are less of them. The lower sample size means a little bit more variance. But across the board, we did tend to see, as encampment resolution started up, a significant dip in the time to interim housing. However, since that point, we are slowly starting to see the time to interim housing creep back up. And if you look at pre-encampment resolution, that time for adults and the overall population was 84 days and 75 days, and it dropped to 62 and 57, although in this most recent quarter, we saw that rise back up to similar levels to pre-encampment resolution. So pointing out that we have certainly noticed a positive impact from encampment resolution, but as one thing we think is worth noting is it's not just as a system, we can't just focus on the first step, which is bringing people off the streets into shelter, but also the next step, which is finding them a permanent place. And that when there are less resources on that end, as we know that there's been a ramp down in time-limited subsidies, which is our main permanent housing resource, we're slowly starting to see a potential bottleneck as there's not that much space. The time it takes the people to move people in, everything sort of starts to slow down. And so we wanted to point out that without proper overall system flow, we expect to see the gains from encampment resolution, or we are seeing the gains from encampment resolution, at least in time to move people into interim housing, slow. And so that's something that we want to continue to monitor as we as we continue efforts in encampment resolution and as we go into a next phase of time-limited subsidies. Any questions on this, or can I think we have a couple more in interim housing before I'll take a quick pause on this. So one other thing to note, oh no, actually, no, that's a good place to stop. So any questions on this specifically unsheltered services? If we don't have any specific questions, we can also wait till the end. And if you had anything to bring up.
Just highlighting what you're saying, is that we're seeing that we're almost it looks like the numbers are parallel or almost exact same to before the encampment resolution started. And that's also being impacted by the ramp down of TLS and also the availability of permanent supportive housing resources. So, there's not many places or spaces for folks to move into. So it's impacting these numbers. But I also want to highlight one of the major things about this KPI system is that we've been working years to get this data and get it to be updated, regularly, all the hard work that's been going into these systems. And, it just further highlights what was shared at the beginning of this meeting about HMIS continuing to be the data point. Because if that is changed, then this information won't be updated in real time, and it also is just going to be sitting there. And this is something that is also public facing information. So folks, like you said, can go to our website, can go to LAHSA's website and get this information. It's reliable. However, if we're moving away from entering all the data in HMIS, or we're splintering that, then this information won't be reliable. I'm just summarizing what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct. Bevan Kuhn, Deputy Chief Analytics Officer. Yes, that is a very good summary. And I really think it's important for our system as we do like system planning, to highlight what John said is like that outflow is more important almost than the inflow, because we can't have that turnover. So you're going to start seeing this back up. And to that point, like if we're not all in the same system, it's really hard. The permanent housing numbers will only include time limited subsidy because as a region, we have a splintered system where we're tracking all of our permanent supportive housing. It's actually across like 3 or 4 different databases. So like it gives us lack of insight. And if we continue to splinter, that's an issue. I want to make clear too, a point that John wrote about encampment resolution brought a lot of new interim housing sites online, which is why you saw that dip. So we are already at maximum capacity in all of our interim housing sites, but then in encampment resolution, we acquired all of these motels that then expanded the portfolio, which allowed us to fill those. And now those hotels, we're not bringing on tons and tons of more hotels. We're like at the cap of the motels that are online. And that's why you're starting to see it, because all those motels are filled. And so like, as you do it, and like, if we want to bring everyone inside, right, we need 40,000 probably interim housing beds for a minute until we can start moving people through. So in the absence of that, you're going to start seeing the system back up. And as we can't move people out of those interim housing sites, we can't move more people in. And so everything has a consequence. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the last thing I want to say there is a perfect example of like really want to shout out the staff and the folks on the ground that are doing the work. When there are open beds, we have folks that do, you know, what it takes to fill those, and they fill those quickly. And that's a lot of what happened in encampment resolution. And a lot of when the timed interim housing slows, it's not because of the people who are doing the good work. It's because there's not enough space a lot of the time. So yeah, it's about resources, right? We have folks that do really good work and we want to empower them. And the more beds available, they will find a way to fill them. Okay, we'll move on to interim housing here. And so again, there not any drastic changes in total served and average length of stay numbers here, although just sort of pointing out when we're looking at this compared to unsheltered services, you see a lot higher numbers of connected to permanent housing, as this is one of the main goals of these types of programs, and lower a decrease in the number of exits to the streets or unknown, as there is much more consistent contact between staff and our participants. So we'll move on to the next slide, which is something that we'll sort of highlight is a little different than what we saw before, which is the average of time to permanent housing. As a reference earlier, we brought up that as encampment resolution started up, the average time to permanent housing from interim housing started to go up, and that was, you know, we filled up interim housing. There were a lot more participants, and now we're starting to see that go back down on this end. And we believe that sort of coincides with sort of the number of available spaces, or the number of resources that are meant to be filled. When there are less resources to fill, that usually goes a bit quicker. Now, and when I bring that up, because one thing we also noticed in last update was that we had seen a lot, like Bevan said, a lot higher throughput to permanent housing because of the encampment resolution. However, with the changes in resources, if you look at the next slide, we started to see a dip in the actual amount of the total volume of throughput to permanent housing, and this coincides directly with the loss of the one-time funding and the TLS Ramtown. And so I think one thing we were able to highlight is we sort of raised the overall level of throughput to permanent housing with encampment resolution, but as that one-time funding goes away, the overall level that we're able to throughput goes back down to sort of what the resources available are.
Yeah, so just as a reminder, in April of last year, we froze all enrollments into time-limited subsidies, and that's what you see right there. No more enrollments. That time-limited subsidy funds really helped supported throughput to interim housing because it was so flexible, so in with limited eligibility restrictions, so we could actually permanently house people faster, and that's a huge impact on the system.
Yeah, and we can see it. We can see it show up in the data quickly when these resources go away. So just sort of talking about those, a general trend we see is when there are less resources to fill, they do get filled slightly quicker, and that's sort of what the earlier slide kind of pointed to. So this is something that we want to note again. Sort of the theme of this presentation is looking at the gains from encampment resolution that we had seen before, but also noticing as funding and resources dry up, we expect to see some of those gains fade away. On a slightly lighter note, we'll look at the next slide. We want to shout out some efforts that we've made on LAHSA's end to work on data quality and the push for data quality. And one of the places we see that show up, specifically in interim housing, where we do have the ability to interact with the participants a lot more. We're seeing a lot less exits to unknown destinations as a portion of all exits. So this is about when we can focus on data quality, we will get a better understanding of where folks are exiting to, which gives us a better understanding of how the overall system is functioning. If we know, if we want to know what outcomes are, right, good or bad, we want to understand the outcomes so we can understand the impact of policy. And so we did want to shout out our data quality team. We are seeing some improvement.
Yeah, just as a quick reminder, we passed the data quality monitoring plan at the COC board in September or August, anyway, late summer. And we started implementing that and rolled out to the all HMIS users, regardless of funder, customized tools where the case manager can see all their portfolio, what data quality errors they have, and also giving resources to different managers, leadership, and doing coaching and like kind of consulting with all our agencies to increase their data quality, in addition to the TA that our program teams are providing.
Okay, so that's the main interim housing. I think a very similar theme to what we saw in the unsheltered services piece. But if you have any questions on any of the interim housing slides, we can I can answer those, or we can move on to TLS.
We can move on to TLS.
Great. Okay. So moving on to time limited subsidy. Now, one thing I will note is the purpose of system KPIs is really looking at things from a high level. So we include our shallow subsidy programs that are there's much less of those, but we do include those in these numbers. So if you look at the average total served at 16,000 this quarter, it is not the entire, that is more than the actual direct time limited subsidy group that is in ramp down right now and is in flux. So just making a note of why that number may seem higher than the overall time limited subsidy portfolio. Another thing is this is served, not necessarily housed. So we're also including the number of folks that are being served by time limited subsidy or shallow subsidy programs, may or may not be housed at the direct moment. The other thing we want to point out, so with some of these numbers, you tend to see higher access to permanent housing, which is a very good thing. Obviously, we want the purpose of time limited subsidy is to allow people to sort of reintegrate into society, and that's exiting that, you know, when you complete the program, we want you to complete the program and have a permanent place to stay. And a lot lower exits to the street or unknown as well, which are good, but that's a general theme with each of these components. The other thing is you'll see a lot higher average time housed. This one, 483 days, is much higher than it was the last time we showed this number, and that is specifically because of the lack of new enrollments, right? If there's been a lot less new time limited subsidy enrollments, there's a lot less folks who have been housed, you know, for just the past quarter because they moved in last quarter. So that's why that number is significantly higher than it was the last time we reported it. So the final theme with
do you have the number what it was reported last time?
It was about 250. It's available on our website. With the average time housed, you'll see it is
250 days.
Yes, 250.
And now 483
moved up
days.
significantly. And again, so one thing is important to note, the way that this metric is built is it includes everybody there. So if you signed up yesterday, you're adding a 1, or if you moved in yesterday, you're adding a 1 to the average. If you've been in TLS for 2 years, you're adding 2 years to the average. So it is very much, as a metric, I'm not in love with it, is very much swayed by really the number of new house folks that will bring that number down a lot.
Well, it impacts it. That's what
it impacts it. Yeah. And I would say that I think right now, like the average time in time limited subsidies is about 15 months, although we do have a lot of really long stayers too. And that's also I think might be talked about if we get to that presentations on the ramp down. But you know, there is this balance of you have some really long stayers and some, and it is used to just stabilize, move on, connect. But for time limited subsidies specifically, it's about 15 months, I think, average.
And yeah, so just pointing out really that the you know, statistics will not always show exactly what it sounds like they should, but really the theme of that number is pointing to the how many fewer folks are newly enrolled or newly moved in via time limited subsidy. We're really mostly folks who have already been in time limited subsidy at this point. And if we move to the next slide, you'll start to see that. So this is really the housed by TLS slide that we looked at last time. As we saw the highest number of folks housed in TLS ever at that point, and it was going up, and that was sort of the height of TLS as far as capacity goes. If we move to the next slide, we've seen that expectedly start to dip, and the number of newly housed folks dip as well. And so this is something, again, you can kind of monitor the overall impact of funding changes in time limited subsidy in our system KPI dashboard. As we can see the change decrease.
And just as of July 1, once again, the county will be moving all of their time limited subsidy funding into CHAMP. So this will come out of the system KPI dashboard, and we'll only be able to report on the city funded time limited subsidy program.
Wow.
And COC, can't forget our great COC funding as well.
And if that could be indicated somewhere on the website, that would be extremely helpful.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that the system KPIs are something that we work with the county on trying to align in metrics, but we'll do a lot of communicating on how our dashboard will be changing when these data changes occur. That is the end of our system KPI presentation. If you have any other questions, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you, and check out the dashboard, the public.
Thank you.
So we can continue with the presentations, but technically the meeting is adjourned.
Oh, okay. So just noting,
Yeah. We're losing quorum, but we can continue with presentations because there's nothing left to vote on.
I echo what Commissioner Sheik just said. No worries. Thank you. Sorry for being late. So we can still take the presentation? Okay, we'll continue on. We'll postpone them. Well, for the public, I think it's important that we get this information out. For my time, I would. Oh, really? Move it to full commission? There's a lot of chefs in the kitchen right now. Yes. Yes, I would like to do that because this information is very time sensitive, just putting it out there. You all have done a lot of great work, and I just want to honor that time in the space for this. We can move through it quickly, but from what I'm seeing, there's a lot of important information here that we do need to share. So just honoring everyone's time.
If I may share, just for your information, item 8.0, the update on the HUD continuum of care, Jess Reed will be doing an additional update at full commission on Friday.
Okay.
So if you do want to make a cut, that's where I would recommend it.
Okay, I agree with that recommendation. So we could cut item 8.0.
If you want to wait, I'll go through the TLS presentation, and if there's time, we could do a quick update from Jess, and if not,
Okay.
push that to Friday.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so moving on to, wait, so you just said that. So we're gonna go into your TLS ramp down. Okay, moving to item number 7.
Thank you, Commissioner Saunders. Again, Nathaniel Vergao, Deputy Chief Program Officer. I'm going to be giving a presentation on progress being made on the ramp down of the time limited subsidies. Just to share the data that is being shared is approximately a week old. I did give this presentation at the Homeless Policy Deputies meeting for the county last Thursday. And so it was data pulled just in advance of that. So it's still fresh, but not today fresh. Yeah, if we can, great. So the first couple of slides I will go through very quickly. They really serve to ensure that everybody has the context of how we got to where we are. That starts back several years as we were working on ensuring that we were getting full utilization of the funding for time limited subsidies. We in fiscal year 22-23, excuse me, in an effort to make full use of the funding, made a programmatic change where enrollments in TLS would happen not from a basic referral that allowed the TLS program to provide basic case management through the housing search process, but we separated out housing navigation from the time limited subsidy program, and referral into time limited subsidy was moved to the point where a participant and their housing navigator identified a housing opportunity for the participant. So we were no longer providing broad case management to folks who were unhoused, but really focusing on the program on folks who were moving into housing, which is really the design of the program in the end anyway, but just narrowing that scope to be able to ensure that focus. That guidance led to improved spending, but it also led to some decreased enrollments in fiscal year 23 because we actually exited participants who were not housed from the enrollments. And as we were implementing this program in fiscal year 24-25, we saw a dramatic increase in utilization in both years 23-24 and 24-25. Again, as a way to increase utilization, we actually over allocated the total number of slots relative to the funding as a push for agencies to be able to fully utilize their funding. And that did lead to significant increases in enrollments and utilization. And you can see what some of that looks like in the following chart, with the blue indicating individual families and individual adults, and the goldenrod, I guess it is, indicating progress with families. And so you can see that we saw a fairly significant increase in the number of households being served, because these are all households that are housed as well. Next slide, please. So in addition to the program changes that we are making to increase utilization of the funding, we also quickly approached a crescendo of funding in fiscal year 24-25, with city, county really looking to maximize utilization of one-time funding. And this included a significant amount of one-time funding through CalWORKs DPSS, HSP funding, and there was one-time funding, multi-year, but one-time funding. So in fiscal year 24-25, you can see that we had a significant increase overall in the amount of funding available for time-limited subsidies, while we were also increasing utilization, that really led to significant enrollments, but also, as we were progressing through that fiscal year, realizing that we were going to be seeing a fiscal cliff, as the state was very clear that there would not be any renewal of that HSP funding, and that there was conversations about reductions in HAP funding as well. As well as with the passage of Measure A, clarity that there would not be increases in county availability of funding. So you can see the funding trend with the dramatic spike in 24-25 and the coming cliff that we're currently facing. Next slide, please. So as the funding cliff became clear, as was mentioned earlier, we worked to stop enrollments of new participants into TLS in April of 25. The goal being to ensure that we would be able to continue serving those who are housed, as we were having to make cuts in overall funding. So we then proceeded to make our allocations based on the households that were recorded as housed and enrolled in TLS at that cutoff date of April 18th. So that's what got us to the place of having one-time funding that are called the ramp down slots, and turnover slots that was the projection of what funding would be available into this coming fiscal year 26-27. So get 2 slides, please. So as a reminder, when we began the fiscal year, the number of one-time slots for this fiscal year, those ramp down slots, totaled roughly 3,500. I believe it was 3,501. And this chart here shows a snapshot of one of our dashboards that's available to our providers, in helping them track progress towards the ramp down. So as in the effort to ramp down from 3,500 slots of one-time funding, we have made dramatic progress in getting to 1,200 slots currently still filled, but that is still a lot of work to be done in the remaining months. So I do want to applaud our providers and our TLS team that have been leading this work. It's been a tremendous effort. And as you'll see in one of the following slides, there's been a dramatic focus on making sure that we're not just exiting participants to the streets or unsheltered destinations, but that we are doing everything in our power to make sure that as we ramp down, we're ensuring that folks can retain their housing in doing so. So the next slide just gives some snapshots. The chart all the way to the left is a repeat of the prior slide. The other two just give breakout specifically for families and individual adults. So we still we have 342 families that are needed to be ramped down, and 886 individual households needing to be ramped down. And for clarification, this is all these numbers are about the programs that have had blended funding or specific one-time funding from the city, or the county or LASA. So this is not, these are not numbers of all TLS as was reported in the KPI conversation.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So as you can see, again, we've been very much focused in our ramp down efforts of working with providers to not just exit folks for the sake of exiting them, but really to focus on transitioning folks either to independence or permanent supportive housing if that is the identified need. I think the chart shows that focus tremendously, with 71% of exits being to permanent housing situations. And that can include independents where they've taken over the rent on their own, as well as transitions to permanent supportive housing. Next slide, please. So as we've shared in other presentations, there's a tremendous amount of support that's being provided to our provider network in this effort. It's being done in collaboration with the city and the county. The chart that's at the bottom of this slide is a snapshot of the dashboards. I wanted to show this because our data team has been phenomenally responsive in helping us with this work. One of the changes that has been made in the dashboard that providers have access to is you'll see right in the middle of that chart that shows the target progress towards their ramp down. So each agency, as they look at their program, can see where they are in terms of their progress towards their ramp down goal. So if they are on track, it says literally just on track. And if not, what is their, how close to being on target are they? Are they within that range of 10 to 49% or under 10% of meeting their target, so that they have a quick snapshot of their progress without having to dive into any of the additional details. So it just gives a quick look. But these dashboards are comprehensive, and each program can see the rosters within their programs, so they can drill down to the client level to make sure that they've got information about what each participant needs in terms of their assessments for permanent housing, their document readiness, et cetera. Okay, just real quickly, in terms of the specific support, you can stay on the slide, but I'm referencing the prior slide. I did just want to mention that our teams are having bi-weekly leadership meetings. There's one tomorrow for all TLS programs that are engaged in ramp down activities, where we are continuing to review data as well as address concerns that may be raised by providers, trying to provide as much support to the leadership of these agencies as possible. We are also continuing our TLS coordinators are meeting on a regular basis with all the providers to review their data and track progress on a regular basis. And we have identified the top 15 providers who are struggling the most. And we are having a concentrated effort with them with guaranteed weekly meetings with those providers to make sure that we are providing as much support as possible to them in these efforts. Okay. So again, in addition, we are collaborating with our city and county partners. So we also have a funders exit working group that is happening every 2 weeks. We call that our TLS working group, and it is representatives from the city, the county, and LASA. And we are reviewing data and progress and looking at any obstacles that may be in the way of this work, so that we can work systematically to eliminate those obstacles. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the big pushes is to get folks connected to permanent supportive housing who have that need. One of the pieces that I didn't mention at the beginning of the presentation was that in the pandemic, we made a concerted shift in how we utilized our time-limited subsidy programs to ensure that we could move folks in regardless of their acuity needs, so we weren't forcing folks to wait in the shelters or in unsheltered destinations while waiting for a permanent supportive housing resource to become available for them. We wanted to be able to get folks into housing and get stable and then do ongoing assessments of need. So we've been doing that in our TLS programs for several years now. As part of the ramp down, our Coordinated Entry System Policy Council did pass guidance this summer that allowed for prioritization of folks in need of TLS to be prioritized for matches to permanent supportive housing. And we've seen, as of beginning of March, nearly 800 households matched to tenant-based resources and 140 plus households matched to project-based resources. So we are seeing the fruits of that play out as we work to get anybody who is in need of PSH connected to that resource this year. As we are doing our projections, we are estimating that in the programs that we've been referencing today, that we are looking at roughly 500 households that are in one-time funded slots that may not have been exited by the end of the fiscal year. So that is a big focus of the work that we're doing right now with the city and the county. As again, our goal is not to just cut off rental assistance to anybody that needs ongoing assistance. And so we're working collaboratively to figure out if there will be ways that we can continue the speed and accelerate the speed of exits to positive destinations, while also trying to figure out what stopgaps we can come up with for next fiscal year for households that are not successful in exiting this year. And so the last slide is just a sort of a recap of the challenges that we've been working with, and just the sheer number of households needed to ramp down, starting with a ramp down of 3,500 households this year alone, which was tremendous. We also have a really significant number of households in our TLS programs that have been assessed to need permanent supportive housing. And we are seeing a decreased access to permanent supportive housing resources as our housing authorities are struggling with shortfall and not being able to replace reutilize vouchers as households exit from a voucher program. They're actually having to pause on utilizing vouchers so that they can get back within budget because of HUD's recapturing of funds. Additionally, there's competing demands as the emergency housing vouchers will be losing their funding at the end of the fiscal year, at the end of the calendar year. So housing authorities are struggling to balance between new resources and sustaining households that they're currently supporting. Yeah, and then just the challenges that we struggle with in just having such a large system with so many partners is the coordination, but we've been seeing a lot of partnership and in this work and seeing improvements in that coordination and partnership throughout this. So with that, I will end, and I'm only 6 minutes over.
You're not over. Thank you very much. Again, not the best news, but just highlighting the efforts, the extensive efforts that you all have made, even from, the beginning when we saw a great drop in the numbers of folks, I want to say in April of last year when the notice came out about the TLS funding. And then it was just emphasized that we don't just want to just exit folks to exit them. And so really be intentional in highlighting and utilizing the best practices that we know in face of all this uncertainty, in face of these very real realities of the providers having to balance out their budgets and the lack of resources. So we're really up, it has been and will continue to be an uphill battle. So really appreciate the reality check that these conversations are bringing, but also highlighting the efforts that you all are doing to be in collaboration with our community partners and providers in face of uncertainty. So thank you for this.
You're welcome.
Information. Do we have any public?
No, Commissioner.
Okay, then we will move to item 9.0, updates, agenda requests. I don't have any. I'm the only one here. Then moving to item 10.0, public participation. Any general public comment?
No, Commissioner.
All right, with that, thank you so much. Adjourn this meeting? Is that what I do?
Thank you,
Okay,
Commissioner.
all right, thank you. I survived.
Well done.